For years, Air Force brass demanded the death of the A-10 Warthog. They set the retirement dates. They drafted the budgets. The jet famous for busting Soviet tanks was supposed to be sent to the boneyard by 2029. But then came the drone swarms. In the skies over the Middle East, $100 million stealth fighters were being forced to shoot million-dollar missiles at cheap, propeller-driven drones. It was a mathematical nightmare that threatened to completely bankrupt the U.S. missile inventory. The Pentagon desperately needed a cheap, brutal, loitering killer to stop the bleeding. So they called on the exact jet they just tried to scrap. The A-10 didn't just return to combat. Outfitted with laser-guided rockets, AI-driven electronic warfare pods, and brand-new air-to-air kill markings painted proudly on its nose, the Warthog's retirement has been officially canceled and extended to 2030. It is completely revolutionizing anti-drone warfare, and the story of how it survived the chopping block is legendary. Welcome to Jet Insight, to understand how a Cold War tank buster became the ultimate 21st century drone hunter. We have to look at the massive cost exchange crisis that terrified the Pentagon. Fast forward to recent conflicts in the Middle East. Adversaries are heavily relying on waves of cheap, slow-moving, explosive one-way attack drones like the Shahed 136. These low-tech threats present a highly asymmetric challenge to modern military doctrine. They crawl through the sky at low altitudes, humming like lawnmowers, utilizing composite materials that generate an incredibly small radar cross-section. Because they fly so close to the terrain, they hide within ground clutter, effectively masking themselves from standard radar filters designed to track high-speed, high-altitude supersonic threats. When an F-35 or an F-15 intercepts one of these drones, it relies on its primary armament, often firing an AIM-120AM RAAM. Think about the structural physics and the economics of that engagement. You have a cutting-edge flying supercomputer, optimized to kill other fifth-generation fighters at beyond visual range, maneuvering into position just to release a hyper-advanced radar-guided interceptor. That single missile costs over $1 million. The drone it is shooting down costs about $20,000. You don't need a math degree to realize the fatal flaw in this strategy. It is a strategy designed to drain the American arsenal through pure attrition. If the enemy launches enough drones, America runs out of highly expensive, sophisticated missiles long before the enemy runs out of cheap fiberglass. Every AMRAAM fired into a swarm over the desert is a complex interceptor that cannot be used to deter near-peer threats elsewhere on the globe. The Pentagon was rapidly realizing that it was winning the immediate tactical engagements while fundamentally losing the broader economic war. The A-10 offers a brutal physical advantage to this problem. It flies low, it flies slow, it can loiter over a target area for hours. Unlike modern air superiority fighters that feature swept wings and high wing loading, aerodynamically optimized to cut through the thin air of the upper atmosphere at high velocities. The Warthog was designed from day one to operate in the dense air near the dirt. Its massive, unswept wings feature oversized control surfaces and a high camber profile that generates incredible lift at stall-defying speeds. This allows the pilot to comfortably cruise right alongside low-altitude propeller threats without risking an aerodynamic stall. It was perfectly suited to visually track and hunt these propeller-driven threats, but it needed a weapon that made economic sense. The multi-million-dollar internal systems of an F-35 are a massive financial overkill for a slow-moving target, whereas the Warthog's physical persistence gives it the capacity to hunt all day. The staggering performance of the A-10 against these swarms forced a massive pivot at the Pentagon. On April 20th, 2026, Air Force Secretary Troy E. Mike made it official. The A-10's retirement was halted. The active duty fleet would be extended through 2030 to preserve vital combat mass. This was a complete operational reversal for an institution that had spent more than a decade fighting Congress to eliminate the platform entirely. Mike stated bluntly, in consultation with, "We will extend the A-10 Warthog platform to 2030. This preserves combat power as the defense industrial base works to increase combat aircraft production." But the Air Force didn't just extend the A-10's life. They quietly transformed it into a precision drone-killing machine using a weapon system that nobody saw coming. The absolute game-changer in this fight is the Advanced Precision Kill Weapon System, or APKWS-2. For decades, the primary issue with close air support platforms was the trade-off between volume and precision. You could either fire a single, highly accurate, incredibly expensive missile, or you could blanket an area with cheap, unguided rockets that risked immense collateral damage. Aerospace engineers figured out how to solve this by taking a cheap, unguided 2.75-inch Hydra rocket and bolting a highly accurate laser guidance seeker directly onto it. The physics behind this upgrade are brilliantly pragmatic. Engineers utilized a distributed aperture semi-active laser seeker, DASALS. Instead of placing a single sensor in the nose of the rocket, which would require redesigning the explosive warhead, they integrated the laser optics directly onto the leading edges of the deployment fins. Once the rocket clears the pod, the fins snap open, the optical sensors lock onto the laser energy painting the drone, and the mid-body guidance section adjusts the flight path in real time. Suddenly, the A-10 isn't wasting million-dollar missiles. It is shooting laser-guided rockets that cost roughly $30,000 per shot. The logistics and magazine depth this provides are unparalleled. Because of their small size, the A-10 can carry dozens of them on a single sortie, instantly turning the Warthog into an absolute buzzsaw against incoming drone swarms. Instead of being limited to 4 or 6 internal missiles like a stealth jet, a single A-10 can carry multiple LAU-68 rocket pods packed with laser-guided rounds. The pilot can lock onto a target utilizing the aircraft's advanced targeting pod, release an APKWS rocket, watch it strike with pinpoint accuracy, and immediately pivot to the next drone in the swarm within seconds. The cost exchange crisis is completely flipped. A $30,000 rocket destroying a $20,000 drone is a sustainable mathematical ratio for the Pentagon. This isn't theory, we have the visual proof. In October 2025, the 124th Fighter Wing of the Idaho Air National Guard returned to Pease, New Hampshire after a grueling 6-month deployment in the CENTCOM area of responsibility. These aircrews had been operating right at the bleeding edge of the drone intercept campaign, analyzing real-time data and refining the intercept geometry required to splash slow-moving targets. Aviation spotters photographing the returning jets noticed something incredible. On the nose of aircraft number 78-0643, a Warthog nicknamed Ares, painted right next to the massive GAU-8 cannon, were the unmistakable silhouettes of 2 Shad-type drones. This wasn't standard tank busting or building destruction tracking. It was visual, undeniable proof that the A-10 was scoring active air-to-air kills against enemy UAVs in a combat zone. For a community that associates the Warthog primarily with low-altitude ground attacks, seeing official drone silhouettes painted on the fuselage sent a clear signal to military analysts worldwide. The Warthog had successfully transitioned from a ground attack specialist into an active component of the airspace defense umbrella. But hunting drones requires immense time on station and the ability to survive in airspace crawling with advanced enemy radar. 2 massive problems the Air Force solved with a pair of highly classified, rapid upgrades. Drones aren't the only threat in the Middle East. Advanced surface-to-air missiles and enemy radar systems are everywhere. Adversarial networks have deployed mobile, layered anti-aircraft systems designed to lock onto any aircraft attempting to interfere with their drone launch paths. To keep the slow-moving A-10 alive in this lethal electromagnetic environment, the Air Force strapped on a system called the Angry Kitten electronic warfare pod. This isn't your grandfather's jammer. Older electronic warfare pods operated by blasting massive amounts of radio frequency noise across a broad spectrum, a brute force method that fundamentally lit up the aircraft like a beacon on enemy passive sensors. The Angry Kitten pod utilizes machine learning and digital radio frequency memory, DRFM, to actively detect, capture, and manipulate enemy radar frequencies in real time. When a hostile radar pulse strikes the aircraft, the DRFM technology digitally records the exact phase and frequency of that specific sine wave. The pod's cognitive algorithms rapidly analyze the signal, calculate a response, and broadcast a phase-shifted return pulse back to the enemy receiver. It essentially tricks the enemy radar into seeing an empty sky, displaying an incorrect range, or tracking a phantom target miles away from the actual position of the aircraft. By May 2026, visual footage confirmed that A-10s were flying with the Angry Kitten pod in live combat zones for the very first time. This artificial electronic shield provides the slow, low-flying jet with the necessary survivability to operate in regions that would otherwise be completely suicidal. Then, they had to address the loiter problem. To hunt drones effectively, a pilot needs to stay in the sky for hours. A drone swarm doesn't operate on a tight schedule. It can drift across hundreds of miles over several hours, utilizing pre-programmed waypoints to avoid known air defense batteries. But traditional boom refueling tankers are massive, vulnerable targets that cannot push too close to the front lines. AKC-135, or AKC-46, is a giant, undefended radar return that must be kept deep in friendly territory, forcing combat jets to leave the combat zone entirely just to top off their tanks. In a brilliant engineering hack, the Air Force developed a new probe refueling adapter. This system can be bolted onto the A-10's nose in a matter of hours. It bypasses the rigid requirement for a traditional boom tanker. Instead, it allows the Warthog to refuel via the probe and drogue method from smaller, much more agile HSE-13 combat search and rescue planes loitering right near the fight. The physics of this logistical shift are massive. The HC-130 can fly at much lower altitudes, mask its presence behind terrain features, and operate from unpaved forward airfields. This brings the fuel directly to the drone hunting grounds, completely eliminating the transit time back to safe airspace. The Air Force confirmed the tactical flexibility of this upgrade, stating units can install or remove the adapter in a matter of hours, allowing aircraft to be reconfigured between boom and probe refueling capability based on mission requirements. This means a maintenance detachment at a forward operating base can fundamentally alter the entire logistics profile of the squadron between sorties. And these upgrades arrived not a single moment too soon, because in February 2026, the A-10 was thrown into the most intense combat environment of the 21st century. On February 28, 2026, the US military launched Operation Epic Fury against Iranian forces. This wasn't a low-intensity counterinsurgency or a simple peacekeeping action. This was an all-out multi-domain war involving ballistic missiles, naval engagements, and intense airspace denial. Hostile forces deployed highly integrated tactical strategies, utilizing multi-layered drone salvos coordinated with anti-ship ballistic strikes to create complete operational saturation across the theater. A recent Congressional Research Service report laid bare the sheer brutality of the campaign. The document provided a sobering assessment of what happens when Western air forces engage a well-equipped, highly motivated regional adversary utilizing asymmetric mass. Across just over a month of heavy fighting, 42 U.S. aircraft were lost or damaged. This statistic sent shockwaves through Washington, underscoring that the uncontested skies of the previous 3 decades were officially a thing of the past. The A-10s were right in the thick of it. They were hunting fast attack boats tearing through the Strait of Hormuz, providing critical top cover for downed pilots, and acting as an aerial shield against incoming one-way drone waves. The tactical geometry of the strait makes it a nightmare for traditional radar systems. The radar clutter generated by the ocean surface and the rocky coastlines allows small fiberglass drones and fast attack craft to mask their approach. Supersonic strike fighters struggled to visually track these low-profile maritime targets at max speeds without risking immense collateral damage. The A-10, however, could drop down to sea level, match the pacing of the surface engagement, and systematically neutralize the threat using precision, APKWS munitions, and short-range bursts from the 30mm Avenger cannon. Simultaneously, they loitered along the coastlines, picking off one-way attack drones before they could cross into open water and threaten Allied carrier strike groups. But the reality of close air support means taking hits. When you operate at low altitudes within the visual range of the enemy, you are exposed to an absolute wall of kinetic energy. You aren't just dodging radar-guided missiles. You are flying through unguided tracer fire, heavy machine gun bursts, and shoulder-fired man-portable air defense systems. On April 3, 2026, an A-10 Thunderbolt II went down after taking heavy enemy fire while providing cover on a search and rescue mission. The jet was circling a downed aircrew position, deliberately drawing hostile fire away from the rescue helicopters, acting as a heavily armored shield. Despite its multi-layered redundancies and titanium armor, the sheer volume of incoming kinetic energy finally compromised the flight controls. Fortunately, the pilot ejected safely and was recovered by Allied forces. But the wreckage proved that while the Warthog is incredibly tough, the modern battlefield is entirely unforgiving. You can build a flying bathtub out of titanium, but sustained, concentrated fire from modern anti-aircraft artillery will eventually find a way to breach it. This loss forces us to ask a difficult but necessary question about the A-10's ultimate limitations moving forward. Despite the brilliant integration of laser-guided APKWS rockets and AI-driven jamming pods, the A-10 is still a slow, non-stealthy aircraft. We have to look at the cold, hard physics of modern airspace architecture. The Warthog features a massive radar cross-section, 0 radar-absorbent coatings, and a maximum cruise speed that makes it a highly trackable kinematic target for modern high-velocity interceptors. If it flies directly into the teeth of a modern, multi-layered integrated air defense system without heavy electronic support and stealth escorts, it will not survive. It cannot play the role of an unescorted deep strike asset against near-peer nations operating sophisticated, long-range radar networks. The titanium armor that protects the pilot from a 23mm ground round offers 0 protection against a 150-pound proximity fragmentation warhead detonating at Mach 4. The Air Force's decision to extend the jet to 2030 isn't because they think the A-10 is invincible. It is a strategic stopgap. The military desperately needs a cheap, reliable, high-endurance drone killer to hold the line. The current industrial complex cannot churn out advanced stealth airframes or million-dollar missiles fast enough to sustain a prolonged war of attrition against cheap autonomous threats. The Warthog represents immediate physical combat mass that is already bought, paid for, and operational on the flight line. They are buying time until the next generation of autonomous collaborative combat aircraft, AI drone wingmen, are fully integrated into the fleet in the 2030s. These future unmanned platforms are designed to handle the exact low-altitude, high-attrition warfare that the A-10 is currently managing. But until those automated systems arrive on the flight line, the men and women on the ground are putting their faith in an airframe built in the 1970s. The A-10 Warthog has survived Congress, survived the Pentagon brass, and survived the most brutal air defenses on Earth. It was built to destroy columns of Soviet armor rolling through the Fulda Gap. But 50 years later, it is actively rewriting the rules of anti-drone warfare in the Middle East. It is a living testament to the engineering principle that rugged, practical simplicity can outlast bloated bureaucratic planning. The story of the A-10 in 2026 proves that the future of warfare isn't exclusively about building $300 million invisible jets. Sometimes, the physics of the battlefield dictate that you just need an indestructible machine packed with cheap rockets, a smart jammer, and a pilot skilled enough to fly it straight into the swarm. What do you think? Did the Pentagon make the right tactical call extending the A-10 to 2030? Or should the money go strictly to newer 5th and 6th generation fighters? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you support the men and women flying the Warthog into combat today, hit the like button, subscribe to Jet Insight, and type JET in the comments below. We'll see you in the next one.